At first glance, you might think this is a very top-heavy tight end class here in 2025, and you could be right, but I think it's a deeper class than that. Let's talk about it. Also, this is a brand new channel, so if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Of course, help us get to where we want to go, but for the content, we're pumping these positional rankings out almost daily for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So going through every single position, we're on to the tight ends, and we're going to kick it off here with Moliki out of UCLA, 6'6", 260, so good size at the tight end position. And honestly, I just think he's an okay day three kind of a prospect. He has deceptive speed, I think that we saw at Senior Bowl weekend, and he just looked a lot more comfortable on the field in everything that he was doing. And it was kind of a breakout year for him in 2024 for the Bruins. Outside of that, he's just very solid all around. I think there is some versatility to his game. But outside of that, you worry about his play strength, you worry about his, I guess, blocking ability. But all around, he's a very solid prospect, and I can see him going somewhere on day three. Now, from number 9 and up, I think you can make a legitimate case that all of these guys could be day one impact players if they're in the right situation. But Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon at 6'5", 255, he looks a lot lighter than 255, so I kind of want to see how he weighs out and measures at the combine, but still ideal size and athleticism as of now. And this is a guy that his yak ability might be the best in the class. 21 missed tackles over the last 2 years at of course, Oregon. I think he's versatile, just like Moliki and a lot of these tight ends in this class, where you can line him up maybe on the outside like these modern offenses like to do, or of course he could play in tight with the offensive line. Outside of that, his hands are the biggest worry for me, as he had an 8.5 drop percentage this past season. And a lot of those were focus drops, man. A lot of those were catching the ball or trying to catch the ball and immediately think about his next move, when he just needs to focus on catching the ball first and then making his move, right? So just slowing down the game a little bit can help with these drops. But outside of that, incredible athlete. And I think, again, he could be a day one impact player. Jake Brenningstool is a coach's favorite player. He is a gym rat, a first in, last out kind of a guy. You guys get where I'm going with this picture. He is that kind of a player, let's just say that. But at 6'6", 240, this is a guy that does check a lot more boxes than Terrence Ferguson to me as an overall solid prospect, as he was a third-team All-SEC member for the last 2 seasons. Therefore, the Clemson Tigers. He has great hands, only a 5% drop rate, which is good given the volume that he's had over this past season. I think he's a good blocker, maybe even an above average blocker, but for now I'll say he's a good blocker given he was at the collegiate level. I think he's very smart when he's in space, again, trying to be a quarterback's best friend. We saw Travis Kelce this last year at Kansas City. He wasn't necessarily running routes there for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was just kind of going out and trying to find space for Patrick Mahomes to find him if he needs a safety blanket underneath. I think Jake Brenningstool is one of the better tight ends in this class at doing just that. But hey, if you need to be him in contested catch situations, he can do that. His contested catch rate is higher than a lot of other tight ends in this class as well. So Elijah Arroyo is a guy that won Senior Bowl weekend at the tight end position at 6'4", 245. You say he's a little bit undersized compared to the tight ends that we've seen in this class so far. But that hasn't really stopped him at his time at Miami. He was second team All-ACC last year, and with his size and speed, he has long arms, right? I'll say that. So he brings a matchup nightmare to pretty much everybody with his speed, right? Because some safeties might not be able to guard him with his size, but these linebackers, are they going to be able to keep up with him because of the speed aspect that Elijah Arroyo does bring? But this past season, the two words that you can describe Elijah Arroyo with is not matchup nightmare. I would say it's more so chain mover, because 25 of his 35 receptions led the first downs. So Cam Ward, when he needed a big play, went to number 8. I do think he is a good blocker, right? I think he's even an above average blocker, and that can be displayed at the next level. He did have it, again, he was the winner at the tight end position for Senior Bowl weekend. The things I worry about are, again, he had some injuries this past season, and that was, of course, He has a lot of ACL history issues, of course, with his knee. So that's just something to look out for with Elijah Arroyo. But again, Senior Bowl weekend, everybody loved him. Everybody fell in love with him. And maybe he goes higher than we think in the draft. Mitchell Evans is next out of the Fighting Irish at 6'5", 260. I think he really, raised his draft stock throughout the college football playoff run, because throughout the regular season, a lot of people overlooked what Notre Dame was doing because, hey, we all kind of said, well, they have an easier schedule. They're going to get there, but they're not going to win any of these big time games. Mitchell Evans was a huge part on why this offense, that when they needed to throw the ball, he was a guy that consistently could catch the ball for him and, of course, make some of those bigger plays when need be. But also, it was a run heavy offense, and he was a great blocker in this offense. I will say that when he does have the ball in the college football playoff, he was very tough to bring down, man, with, again, 6'5", 260 frame. And he had a 72% catch percentage in contested catch situations. So great hands, right? His volume wasn't there, and that's one thing that you could say maybe as a con. Can he handle a full workload at the next level? And just something to look out for. But outside of that, he's not the greatest athlete as far as his yak ability and his medicals. Just like Arroyo does have a history of ACL issues, something to look out for these NFL teams going to the next level again. But he's a very solid tight end. And if you really need a blocker, he kind of fits into like a San Francisco offense where he's just going to be that great blocker. And when you need him to, he can catch the football and run. Gunnar Helm out of the Texas Longhorns, a guy that I just like his tape a lot. 60 receptions, 780 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Of course, honors of the second team All SEC. I think he has ideal size. I think he has great ball skills. He has great hands. Only a 3% drop rate, and given his volume, again, is very impressive. And he does bring that versatility, like some of these top guys in this class, where he can go tight, he can go in a slot, or hey, if you want to throw him on the boundary in the red zone, I think he can do that as well. And of course, in modern day football, that's one thing you want. You want versatility out of these tight ends, at least if you want to rely on them as a pass catcher, which Gunnar Helm can bring to any offense at the next level. I do want to say that he's not the blocker of some of the guys like Elijah Arroyo, Mitchell Evans, or even some of the guys below him, right? Like a Jake Brenningstool. Regardless, outside of that, this is a guy that is, again, he's not the most elusive tight end in the class. He's not like Elijah Arroyo. He doesn't have crazy speed. But this is a guy that is going to catch the football. He's reliable in that aspect, and he's a chain mover. So he's going to fit in pretty much any offense at the next level. Now we move into the tight ends at the top of this class, and I believe that these guys can be number one tight ends on a team for close to a decade here at the next level. And we're going to kick it off here with Mason Taylor, a guy that has the pedigree, man. Jason Taylor, of course, future Hall of Famer. If I'm not mistaken, he already is a Hall of Famer. Of course, legendary pass rusher for the Miami Dolphins. That is his uncle, right? That also means Joy Taylor is a relative of his. So, of course, hopefully these guys have different ways to the top of the mountain. Regardless, Mason Taylor, third team All SEC honors this past season. I think he has good yak ability, as we saw with Nussmeier in this LSU offense this past season. Nussmeier, not the biggest believer in him, but hey, when he got the ball to Mason Taylor, this offense was able to make some things happen when it seemed like there was nothing else really going for the offense. I think he has very sure hands. I think he's very smart in space. Again, I think you can use him in that Kelsey role where you kind of just throw him out there, right? He's not necessarily the greatest route runner, but you just throw him out there and say, hey, find some space, be the quarterback's best friend, and let's get this first down if there's nothing else open on the field. Outside of that, again, he's not the greatest athlete. He's not the greatest blocker, but I think he's a very solid overall offensive tight end that any team's going to be happy to have him. The fan favorite in Harold Fannin Jr. at 6'4", 230 came out of nowhere in this past season for Bowling Green, and his production was off the charts. Ladies and gentlemen, 117 receptions. That's not over the last 2 or 3 years. That's this past season for Bowling Green. Over 1,600 yards to pair with that and 11 touchdowns to top it off. It was an insane season for Harold Fannin there in Bowling Green. He broke the FBS single season record by a tight end for receptions in a season, which is impressive. Again, making history is always a good thing. But there were some things that early in the season really caught our eye as far as individual performances. And I think this Penn State game put this man on the map. In the Penn State game, I think in week 2 of the season, he had 11 receptions, 137 yards, and a touchdown against the Nittany Lions. Again, a team that went to the Final Four in the college football playoff. And then a couple weeks later, he had a game against Texas A&M. He had 8 receptions in that game, 145 yards, and another touchdown. This dude is insane. He can handle this insane volume at the next level. And sure, I don't think he's going to have this crazy of production at the next level, at least not immediately. But the potential is there for a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. 150 targets in 2024, only 4 drops. So the catch percentage, the drop percentage, they're all in the elite of the elite, I guess, categories. I do think that when I watch him, I've heard some other comps around the league. I see David Njoku. As a Browns fan, I might be biased, but I see David Njoku in Harold Fannin Jr. I do think that David Njoku, of course, has the size advantage on a guy like Harold Fannin, but I just, their play styles to me scream the same, right? At least that's what I see on film. Again, outside of that, he just plays with that dog in him. And despite being undersized, I think he's going to put on some weight going into the next level. I could see him being 240, 245. But even if he is a little bit undersized, if he's going to have that production, I don't care if he's 215. If that production is going to be there, every team's going to be excited to draft him, maybe as early as round number 1. Now, a guy that kind of fell off as far as his draft stock a little bit, Colston Loveland, and it wasn't his own fault. He was still second team All Big Ten. He's still a matchup nightmare with his size and speed combination with his catch radius that he does bring to any offense and again for every single game at 6'5", 245, and again longer arms. The reason why I think people kind of aren't looking as deeply into Colston Loveland is because of his quarterback's situation and his stats that fell off this season compared to 2023, again, when he had a serviceable quarterback like J.J. McCarthy. Alex Orji and whatever quarterbacks they else had there in the Michigan offense this year, they just weren't great quarterbacks, and that really turned this offense into a kind of a balanced approach, which Jim Harbaugh had, to really a run-focused, we're going to be a 3-and-out offense the majority of the time kind of a thing. They were one of the worst offenses in the country because they couldn't get the ball to their playmakers, or at least not effectively. But I think Colston Loveland struggled the most out of any of these players in this offense because of how this offense played this past season. So again, he's a very solid tight end. He's a good blocker as well. He screams, and I hate to say this because, again, I think everybody kind of sees this. He screams like a Jim Harbaugh tight end, and I think he's going to end up with the Chargers there in the middle of the first round. If not, I could see him pretty much in any offense because he's that solid and that, I guess, polished of a tight end going into the next level. I think he's an immediate day one guy, whether if you want to use him primarily as a blocker or as an all-around threat. I think he can do that and serve pretty much any team. And at number 1, this is arguably one of the best tight end prospects we've seen in the last decade, up there with a guy like Kyle Pitts. Of course, hopefully Tyler Warren is actually used in his offense going into the next level, and hopefully he can produce more than what we saw a lot of Kyle Pitts so far in his career. As a Gators fan, it kind of hurts seeing Kyle Pitts struggling the way that he is. But for Tyler Warren at 6'6", 260, already, you say the size, that's a check mark, right? But his production is what puts him over the top. Last season alone, 104 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 8 touchdowns. All right. If we ended the conversation there, you're saying that's a first-round tight end. I want that dude on my team, right? Great size and great production. But it continues. Over 220 rushing yards with 4 more touchdowns on the ground. I mean, what are we talking about, right? I mean, is this dude a fullback? Is he a tight end? What is he, right? And then also to put a cherry on top, he also had a 35-yard passing touchdown. Oh, if we want to continue to say that, he also played center this year, and then he went out and caught a 50-yard touchdown after snapping the ball on that singular play. This dude was outstanding. I think it's almost disrespectful to say that he was first team All Big Ten. I think it's disrespectful to say that he wasn't a top 5 guy in the Heisman voting this year. Regardless, He's just a red zone threat. 12 of his 15 touchdowns this year came in the red zone. Great drop percentage. Only dropped the ball about 2.5% of the time, give or take. And he's again great in contested catch situations. He's a great blocker. The only thing that I guess I can worry about here, and this is nitpicking, he doesn't have the top end speed of an Elijah Arroyo or a Harold Fannin, but outside of that, he checks all the boxes, and I don't care what offense you think you want to put him in, he's going to produce at the next level as long as he's not given the Kyle Pitts treatment. But here is my top 10. As of now, I think I've only looked into about 15 to 20 tight ends, but I'm just going to stick with my top 10 because I think everybody else is kind of irrelevant and they might not even get drafted at the next level. So we're going to stick here to these guys on your screen now. Of course, 3 of these guys have at least a top 50 grade. Tyler Warren makes his way into the top 10. So it is definitely on paper a top heavy draft class at the tight end position. But I think there's a very solid 7 to 8 tight ends in this class, maybe even 9 if you want to include Terrence Ferguson. But regardless, this is the tight ends. If you guys enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we're going to have our interior offensive lineman. The next day, offensive tackle. The next day, interior defensive lineman. The point is that we are going to be pumping out these positional rankings almost every single day for the next week. So if you enjoy, support us down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.